The morning sun cast long shadows across Seoul Polytechnic University as students hurried to their classes. Among them walked Lee Hana, her black hair tied in a simple ponytail and her backpack heavy with engineering textbooks. She moved quietly through the crowded hallways, keeping her head down and avoiding eye contact with other students. Hana slipped into her advanced weapons engineering classroom and took her usual seat in the back corner. The room buzzed with conversations about weekend parties and upcoming exams, but she remained silent. She opened her notebook and began sketching while waiting for Professor Ryu Seokman to arrive. The drawings in her notebook were not typical student doodles. They were detailed weapon designs with precise measurements and technical notes. She had modified standard military rifle blueprints, improving their power output and reducing their weight. Her pencil moved with practiced ease as she added small improvements to a plasma rifle design. Professor Ryu entered the classroom, and the chatter died down. He was a tall man with graying hair who had worked for the military before becoming a teacher. His eyes scanned the room and briefly paused on Hana in the back corner. "Today we will discuss the theoretical limits of plasma weapon efficiency," Professor Ryu announced. He began writing equations on the digital board. The energy required to maintain plasma stability often exceeds the actual damage output. This is why most military forces still prefer traditional projectile weapons. Several students raised their hands to ask questions. They debated the pros and cons of different energy sources and argued about cooling systems. Hana listened carefully but never spoke. She already knew the answers to most of their questions. More importantly, she had already solved many of the problems they were discussing. In her notebook, she had designed a cooling system that was 30% more efficient than current military standards. She had also figured out how to reduce plasma weapon recoil by redirecting energy flow through secondary chambers. But she kept these innovations to herself. When class ended, students packed their bags and left in groups. Hana waited until the room was nearly empty before gathering her things. As she walked toward the door, Professor Ryu called her name. "Miss Lee," he said, "could I speak with you for a moment?" Hana stopped and turned around. Her expression remained neutral as she approached his desk. "Your test scores are exceptional," Professor Ryu said, looking at his tablet. "You scored perfect marks on every exam this semester. But you never participate in class discussions. Is there a reason you prefer not to speak?" Hana looked down at her notebook. "I understand the material," she said quietly. "I do not need to ask questions." "But engineering is not just about understanding," Professor Ryu replied. "It is about sharing ideas and working with others. Your designs could benefit from peer review and collaboration." Hana shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She did not like attention. She did not like explaining her thoughts to others. Most of all, she did not like the way people looked at her when she spoke about weapons with too much knowledge and enthusiasm. "I work better alone," she said finally. Professor Ryu studied her face. He had taught thousands of students over the years, but few had impressed him like Hana did. Her technical understanding was far beyond her classmates. Sometimes he wondered if she understood the material better than he did. "Very well," he said. "But if you ever want to discuss your ideas, my office hours are Tuesday and Thursday afternoons." Hana nodded and left the classroom. She walked across campus to her part-time job at Hanwha Defense Systems, a military contractor that built weapons for the Korean military. Her supervisor, an older engineer named Kim Ju-won, had hired her because of her exceptional test scores and recommendation from Professor Ryu. At the workshop, Hana assembled rifle components with methodical precision. Her hands moved quickly and efficiently, never making mistakes. The other workers had stopped trying to make conversation with her months ago. She preferred it that way. While she worked, her mind wandered to the weapon modifications in her notebook. She imagined testing them at a firing range, watching her improved designs outperform standard military equipment. But these were just daydreams. She was only a student with no real authority or resources. As evening approached, Hana finished her shift and took the subway home to her small apartment. She lived alone in a modest one-room space filled with textbooks and technical manuals. On her desk sat a framed photo of her younger sister Gumby, who was studying on Mars Colony. Every month, Hannah sent most of her earnings to support Gumby education. It meant living on instant noodles and second-hand clothes, but she did not mind. Her sister's dreams mattered more than her own comfort. That night, as Hannah studied for tomorrow's exams, she had no idea that everything was about to change. Far beyond Earth orbit, unknown ships were moving through the darkness of space. Soon, her quiet life of books and blueprints would give way to something far more dangerous. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity, peaceful students, were forced to become warriors. 3 months had passed since the Kilethi first contacted Earth. Hannah remembered the excitement that had swept through the university when the news broke. Alien visitors had arrived at the edge of human space, claiming they wanted peaceful trade and cultural exchange. The entire world celebrated humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization. Hannah had watched the early broadcasts with curiosity but little enthusiasm, while her classmates debated what alien technology might mean for engineering. She continued her quiet routine of classes and work. The Kilethi seemed friendly enough in their communications, but something about their formal speeches felt wrong to her. Now she understood why. The university common room was packed with students staring at the wall-mounted screens. Emergency broadcasts played on every channel. The cheerful diplomatic messages from 3 months ago had been replaced by images of burning space stations and destroyed ships. Hannah stood in the back of the crowd, her face pale as she watched the footage. The Kilethi fleet had emerged from hyperspace without warning, their massive ships dwarfing everything humanity had built. What the aliens called diplomatic vessels were actually warships larger than Earth cities. The first attack came at Dawn Station, humanity's outermost orbital platform. The Kilethi weapons carved through the station hull like it was made of paper. Bright green energy beams sliced metal and concrete with terrifying ease. Within minutes, the station that housed 50,000 people was nothing but floating. She showed him her notebook page, covered with wave equations and energy calculations. "Look at this footage again," she said, pointing to a tablet displaying the news clips. "Watch how their weapons work." Minho studied the screen, trying to understand what she was seeing. The Kilethi energy beams looked like solid streams of light to him. "Their shields use harmonic frequencies," Hannah explained. "Each pulse of their weapons creates a resonance pattern. If we can match that frequency and invert it, we might be able to disrupt their defenses." Minho stared at her. "You figured all this out just from watching the news?" "Maybe," Hannah said. She closed her notebook and stood up. "I need to test something." "Where are you going?" he asked. "To the engineering labs," she replied. "If I am right about the frequency patterns, I can build something that will hurt them." "The labs will be locked," Minho protested. "Security will not let anyone in during the evacuation." Hannah looked at him with an expression he had never seen before. It was not quite a smile, but there was something fierce in her eyes. "Then I will find another way in," she said. As she walked away, Minho realized that his quiet friend had changed. The scared student from the common room was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone focused on a single deadly purpose. The Kilethi had made a mistake when they chose to attack humanity. They had studied human defenses and military capabilities, but they had overlooked something important. They had not studied Hannah. Hannah had been working in the abandoned engineering lab for 3 days straight. She had broken in through a maintenance window after the university evacuation, and now the place belonged to her alone. Empty food containers and energy drink cans littered her workspace. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but her hands remained steady as she assembled her prototype weapon. The lab looked like a tornado had hit it. She had torn apart every piece of equipment she could find, salvaging components and circuits. Oscilloscopes and frequency generators were connected with improvised cables. In the center of the chaos sat her creation, a rifle that looked nothing like standard military weapons. The weapon was sleeker than normal guns, with strange curved sections along the barrel. Blue lights pulsed along its length in a rhythm that matched her calculations. Most importantly, it hummed with a frequency that made her teeth ache when she held it. Park Min-ho found her there on the fourth morning. He had been searching the campus for hours, worried about his friend who had vanished during the evacuation. When he saw her through the lab window, he almost did not recognize her. Hana looked like she had been possessed by something fierce and desperate. Her normally neat hair hung loose around her face. Her clothes were stained with grease and solder marks. But her eyes burned with an intensity that made him step back. "You have been here all this time?" he asked, climbing through the window she had left open. "Working," she replied without looking up from her weapon. "I think I have it figured out." Min-ho looked around the destroyed lab. "What exactly have you figured out?" She held up a small piece of twisted metal. "This came from a Kilathi drone that crashed in the Seoul suburbs yesterday. I convinced a salvage worker to let me examine it for an hour." The metal fragment was unlike anything Min-ho had seen. It seemed to shift colors as the light hit it, and it felt warm to the touch even though it had been sitting on the workbench. "Their shield generators work on quantum harmonic principles," Hana explained. "The frequency signature is more complex than I first thought, but I found the key. Every shield has a resonance point where the energy waves cancel each other out." She picked up her prototype rifle and checked its power readings. "If I fire a projectile that vibrates at exactly the right frequency, it should pass through their shields like they do not exist." "That sounds impossible," Min-ho said. "So did faster than light travel 50 years ago," Hana replied. She walked to the far end of the lab where she had set up a test target. It was a piece of Kilathi hull plating she had obtained from the same salvage worker, along with a small shield generator she had extracted from the drone wreckage. The shield generator cast a faint blue glow around the hull plating. Hana had tested it with conventional weapons earlier. Bullets bounced off harmlessly, and laser pointers simply scattered when they hit the barrier. Now she raised her prototype weapon and took careful aim. The rifle hummed louder as she charged its systems. The blue lights along the barrel pulsed faster, building to a crescendo that filled the lab with an electric whine. She pulled the trigger. The projectile was barely visible, just a blur of motion that crossed the lab in an instant. When it hit the shielded target, there was no dramatic explosion or flash of light. The bullet simply passed through the energy barrier, as if it was not there, and punched a perfect hole through the alien metal. The shield generator sparked and died. The hull plating clattered to the floor with a neat round hole through its center. Min-ho stared at the target, then at Hana, then back at the target. His mouth opened and closed without making any sound. "It works," Hana said quietly. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking slightly as she set down the rifle. Before Min-ho could respond, they heard the sound of vehicles outside. Through the lab windows, they could see military trucks pulling up to the university entrance. Soldiers in combat gear were jumping out and spreading across the campus. "Someone must have reported the gunshot," Min-ho whispered. Hana picked up her prototype weapon and checked its charge level. "Good," she said. "I need to show this to someone with authority." "What are you going to tell them?" Min-ho asked. "That I found a way to kill Kilathi," she replied. The lab door burst open, and 3 soldiers entered with their weapons raised. Their leader, a woman with major insignia on her uniform, looked around the destroyed room with sharp eyes. "Step away from the weapon," the major ordered. Hana set the rifle down carefully but kept her hands visible. "My name is Lee Hana," she said. "I am a student here. I have developed something that can penetrate Kilathi shields." The major, whose name tag read Kim Jio, studied Hana's face. She had seen enough desperate people in the past week to recognize genuine determination when she saw it. "Prove it," Major Kim said. Hana looked at the punctured target, then back at the officer. She had spent 3 days working on a solution to humanity's greatest problem. Now she had 30 seconds to convince someone in power that a college student had succeeded where military scientists had failed. She picked up the alien hull fragment and held it toward Major Kim. "This metal is supposed to be impenetrable," she said, "but there is a hole in it now, and I know how to make more holes." Major Kim examined the metal piece, running her finger along the smooth edges of the bullet hole. After a moment, she looked back at Hannah with new respect. "Come with us," she said. "There are some people who need to see this." The underground research facility buzzed with activity. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock to understand Hannah's breakthrough, while she helped them build more prototype weapons. Major Kim Ji-ho had brought her to this secret location beneath the mountains outside Seoul, where humanity's best minds gathered to fight the Kilathi invasion. For 2 weeks, Hannah had worked alongside military researchers to refine her harmonic disruption technology. They called it the HD rifle, and early tests showed it could penetrate any Kilathi shield they had captured. The weapons were complex to build and required rare materials, but they worked. Dr. Yoon Sulji, the facility chief scientist, treated Hannah with respect that surprised everyone. Here was a college student teaching military experts how to build weapons that could save their species. The older woman often asked for Hannah's opinions on technical problems that had stumped her team for days. But success came with a price. The Kilathi had detected the new weapon signatures during field tests. Their intelligence network was better than anyone had imagined, and they were hunting for the source of the technology that could threaten them. Hannah was calibrating her newest rifle design when the alarms began screaming throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors as automated voices announced a security breach. Through the laboratory windows, she could see explosions lighting up the mountainside above them. "Emergency evacuation protocols are now in effect," the speakers blared. "All personnel report to designated safe rooms immediately." Scientists and technicians ran past the laboratory door, carrying data drives and research materials. Dr. Yoon appeared in the doorway, her face pale with fear. "Hannah, we need to move now," she shouted. "The Kilathi have found us. Their assault shuttles are landing on the surface." Hannah looked at her workbench covered with weapon prototypes and research notes. Everything humanity needed to fight back was in this room. If the Kilathi destroyed it, the war would be over before it truly began. "Go," she told Dr. Yoon. "Get everyone to safety. I will protect the research." "Are you insane?" Dr. Yoon replied. "There are at least 50 Kilathi soldiers up there. You cannot fight them alone." Hannah picked up 2 of her HD rifles and checked their power levels. Both weapons hummed with deadly energy, their harmonic frequencies perfectly tuned to disrupt alien shields. She had never fired them at living targets before, but she understood their capabilities better than anyone. "I built these weapons," she said quietly. "Now I get to test them properly." The facility shook as explosions grew closer. Through the security monitors, Hannah could see Kilathi warriors moving through the upper levels. They were tall reptilian creatures covered in scaled armor that gleamed under the emergency lights. Their weapons fired green energy beams that melted through concrete walls. Dr. Yoon grabbed her arm. "Please, come with us. The research means nothing if you die here." Hannah gently pulled free from the older woman's grip. "If I run now, they will destroy everything we have built. Then more people will die in the future because we could not stop them today." She moved toward the laboratory entrance, her footsteps silent despite the chaos around her. The quiet student who once avoided speaking in class had become something harder and more dangerous. The first Kilathi warrior appeared in the corridor outside the lab. It was nearly 8 feet tall, with golden scales and massive clawed hands that held an energy rifle. When it saw Hannah, it made a sound that might have been laughter. "Human child," the creature spoke in accented English. "You should be running with the others." Hannah raised one of her rifles and aimed at the warrior center mass. Her hands were perfectly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her body. She had spent weeks calculating the exact frequency needed to disrupt Kilathi personal shields. "I do not run," she replied. The alien warrior triggered its energy weapon, sending a green beam toward her position. Hannah threw herself sideways, rolling behind a metal workbench as the beam scorched the wall where she had been standing. The smell of melted concrete filled the air. She came up firing, her HD rifle releasing its harmonic projectile with a sharp crack. The bullet passed through the Kilathi warrior shield like it was made of air and struck the creature in the chest. Purple blood sprayed across the corridor wall as the alien fell backward. More warriors appeared, alerted by the sounds of combat. They moved with military precision, using advanced tactics to corner their human prey. But Hannah had advantages they did not expect. She knew every corridor and room in the facility, and more importantly, she had weapons they could not defend against. The battle became a deadly game of hide and seek through the research complex. Kilathi warriors hunted her with thermal sensors and motion detectors, but Hannah moved like a ghost through the facility she had memorized. When they thought they had cornered her, she would appear from an unexpected direction and strike before vanishing again. Her HD rifles spoke with quiet authority, each shot finding its target despite shields that had never been penetrated before. Purple blood marked her path through the facility as Kilathi warriors fell to weapons they could not understand or counter. When the shooting finally stopped, 12 alien soldiers lay dead throughout the complex. Hannah stood in the main laboratory, surrounded by the research that would change the course of the war. Her clothes were torn and stained with alien blood, but her expression remained calm. Major Kim Jio found her there 20 minutes later, leading a rescue team through the facility wreckage. The major had expected to find bodies and destroyed equipment. Instead, she found one small woman cleaning her weapons with methodical precision. Status report, Major Kim demanded, though she could already see the answer in the purple stains throughout the complex. Facility secure, Hannah replied. Research data intact. Enemy casualties 12. Human casualties 0. Major Kim looked at the alien bodies, then back at Hannah. The quiet student was gone forever, replaced by something far more dangerous to humanity enemies. You are not going back to research, she said finally. You are coming with us to the front lines. Hannah nodded and picked up her rifles. It was time to teach the Kilathi what humans could do when they stopped being prey and started being predators. 6 months after the research facility attack, Hannah had become a legend among human resistance forces. She led a small strike team through the outer colonies, hitting Kilathi installations with surgical precision. Her HD weapons had evolved too, becoming sleeker and more deadly with each mission. The team consisted of 5 members, including herself. Park Min-ho had trained as a combat medic, using his xenobiology knowledge to treat wounds inflicted by alien weapons. 2 former Korean military specialists, Sergeant Lee Daejin and Corporal Song Nari, handled explosives and tactical support. The 5th member was Lieutenant Jin Won-oh, a pilot who could fly anything with wings or engines. Their latest target was a Kilathi weapons factory on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Intelligence reports said the facility was building new armor designed specifically to counter HD weapons. If the enemy succeeded, humanity would lose its only advantage in the war. Hannah studied the mission briefings in their stolen transport ship as they approached Europa. The factory was heavily defended with energy shields, automated turrets, and a garrison of 50 Kilathi warriors. A direct assault would be suicide for any normal team. But Hannah's team was far from normal. Ghost Striker, this is command, came the voice through their communication system. That was the nickname human forces had given her after she vanished and reappeared during battles like a phantom. Are you ready for insertion? Affirmative, Command, Hannah replied. Beginning approach to target zone. The Kilathi called her something different. They had named her Karishvol, which meant silent death in their language. The bounty on her head was larger than the reward for any human military commander. Alien warriors who had conquered 17 star systems now spoke her name in whispered tones. Their ship descended through Europa's thin atmosphere toward the ice-covered surface. The weapons factory sat in a crater surrounded by geothermal vents that provided power for its operations. Kilathi patrol ships circled the facility in regular patterns, their sensors sweeping for intruders. First phase is stealth insertion, Hannah told her team as they prepared their equipment. Min-ho, you stay with the ship and monitor communications. Everyone else follows my lead. They dropped from their transport using personal gliders, invisible against the starry sky. Hannah had calculated the patrol patterns perfectly, finding a gap in the sensor coverage that lasted exactly 4 minutes and 20 seconds. It was enough time to reach the factory outer perimeter. The facility was larger than expected, with multiple levels built into the crater walls. Steam rose from the geothermal vents, creating a misty atmosphere that would help hide their movements. Kilethi guards stood at regular intervals, their reptilian forms easily visible through thermal imaging. Hannah signaled for her team to spread out. She had learned that small groups were more effective than large armies when fighting the Kilethi. They could adapt to human tactics quickly, but they struggled against unpredictable individual actions. She moved through the facility like water flowing around stones, always finding the path of least resistance. Her footsteps made no sound on the metal walkways. When guards appeared, they died silently before they could raise an alarm. Her HG rifles whispered death with each perfectly placed shot. The team reached the main production floor after eliminating 12 sentries. Through reinforced windows, they could see the new Kilethi armor being assembled by automated machines. The metal plates were thicker than previous designs, with strange crystalline components embedded in their surface. Minho's voice crackled through their earpieces. "Hannah, I am picking up increased communications chatter. I think they know you are here." She was not surprised. The Kilethi had been studying her methods for months, trying to predict her movements. They had started using new patrol patterns and sensor arrays specifically designed to catch her team. "How long until patrol ships reach us?" she asked. 15 minutes, came the reply. More than enough time. Hannah placed explosive charges on the armor production machinery while her team secured the exits. Each blast would set back Kilethi armor development by several months, buying humanity precious time to develop new weapons. But as they prepared to leave, alarms began wailing throughout the facility. Emergency lights fed everything in red as blast doors sealed the main exits. Through the factory windows, Hannah could see Kilethi warriors rushing toward their position. It was a trap. The enemy had let them penetrate the facility, then locked them inside with overwhelming numbers. Combat data from previous missions had taught the aliens exactly how to corner her team. "Ghost Striker, this is an emergency broadcast," came a new voice over their communications. Hannah recognized it as Colonel Park Jin-young from Mars Command. "We have received a message from the Kilethi flagship. They are holding prisoners." The transmission included a video feed that made Hannah's blood turn cold. Her sister Unbi sat in a Kilethi detention cell, her clothes torn and her face bruised. Standing beside her was the massive form of War Marshal Vextar, the Kilethi military commander who had conquered the Proxima system. "Your sister lives for now," the alien spoke directly to the camera. "Surrender yourself, silent death, and she will be spared. Continue your resistance, and she will provide entertainment for our troops before we dispose of her." The video feed ended, leaving only static and the sound of approaching enemy forces. Hannah stood perfectly still as her team waited for orders. Around them, the trap was closing with mechanical precision. Lieutenant Jin asked the question they were all thinking. "What do we do now?" Hannah checked her weapons and counted her remaining ammunition. The facility was surrounded. Her sister was captured, and the enemy had finally found a way to hurt her that did not involve military tactics. But they had made one crucial mistake. They assumed she would choose between saving her sister and continuing the mission. They did not realize that Hannah, the girl who once sat silently in engineering classes, had learned to do both impossible things at the same time. "We complete the mission," she said quietly. "Then we go get my sister." The Kilethi were about to learn that some prey, when cornered, became the most dangerous predators of all. The explosions echoed through the Kilethi weapons factory as Hannah team completed their mission. Destroyed armor production machinery burned throughout the facility while alien warriors searched desperately for the intruders who had vanished like ghosts. By the time security forces reached the main production floor, they found only smoking wreckage and empty corridors. Hannah had led her team through maintenance tunnels and ventilation shafts to escape the trap. Her knowledge of engineering systems allowed her to find paths that the Kelethi had never considered. They emerged on the surface 2 kilometers from the factory, where Lieutenant Jin had hidden their transport ship behind an ice ridge. As they lifted off from Europa, Hannah stared at the burning facility below. The mission was a success, but the image of her sister in that detention cell burned in her memory. Yunbui had looked so small and frightened, nothing like the confident student who sent cheerful messages from Mars Colony. "Command is requesting an immediate debrief," Minho said from the communication station. "They want to discuss rescue options for the prisoners." Hannah knew what Command would tell her. A rescue mission to the Kelethi flagship was impossible. The massive ship carried over 10,000 alien warriors and enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Military doctrine said that sacrificing one life to save many was necessary during wartime. But military doctrine had never met Hannah. "Set course for the Jupiter orbital station," she ordered Lieutenant Jin. "I need to review the intelligence files on Kelethi ship designs." The team spent the next 12 hours planning what everyone except Hannah considered a suicide mission. The flagship Devastator of Worlds hung in orbit around Jupiter like a metal moon. It was 3 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that could tear through human battle cruisers. No human ship had ever successfully attacked a vessel that large. Captain Yumdeho met them at the orbital station with grim news. The Kelethi had broadcast another message, this time showing dozens of human prisoners from various captured colonies. War Marshal Vextar promised to execute 1 prisoner every day until Hannah surrendered herself. "This is psychological warfare," Captain Yun explained. "They know you care about civilian casualties. They are using your compassion against you." Hannah studied the intelligence reports on the Kelethi flagship. The ship had multiple shield generators and redundant power systems. Its detention areas were located in the most heavily defended sections. Even if someone could board the vessel, reaching the prisoners would require fighting through hundreds of enemy soldiers. The plan she developed was insane by any reasonable standard. She would use a maintenance pod to approach the flagship disguised as space debris. Once inside, she would rely on stolen Kelethi equipment and her intimate knowledge of their technology to reach the detention center. The escape would depend on timing, luck, and her ability to kill anyone who stood in her way. "You cannot do this alone," Park Min-oh said when she explained the plan. "Take the team with you. We have trained for impossible missions." "This is not a team mission," Hannah replied. "One person might slip through their defenses unnoticed. 5 people would trigger every alarm system they have." She spent the next day preparing for the infiltration. Her HD weapons were modified for close-quarters combat, with silencers and extended power cells. She studied recordings of Kelethi guard rotations and memorized the ship layout from captured technical manuals. Captain Yun tried one last time to dissuade her. "Intelligence estimates your chances of success at less than 5%. We cannot afford to lose you for such a small probability of saving the prisoners." Hannah checked her equipment one final time. Her sister was somewhere on that ship, probably wondering if anyone would come for her. The thought of Yumbi dying alone in an alien prison cell was worse than any fear of her own death. "Those prisoners are not statistics," she said quietly. "They are people with families who love them. I will not abandon them because the odds are bad." The maintenance pod launched from the orbital station at 300 hours, its engines cold to avoid detection. Hannah piloted it manually toward the massive Kelethi flagship, using Jupiter gravity well to mask her approach vector. The ship grew larger and more terrifying. As she drew closer, its hull covered with weapons and sensor arrays. But she felt no fear as she guided the pod toward a maintenance airlock on the ship's lower levels. The quiet student who once avoided attention had become someone who flew directly toward the most dangerous place in the solar system without hesitation. The Kelethi thought they understood human psychology. They believed that threatening innocent lives would force their most dangerous enemy to surrender or retreat. They were about to learn that some humans became more dangerous when their loved ones were threatened. As the pod docked with the flagship airlock, Hannah activated her weapons and checked her infiltration gear one last time. War Marshal Vextar had made this personal when he captured her sister. That was his first mistake. His second mistake would be thinking that she had come to surrender. She had come to collect what belonged to her, and she would kill anyone who tried to stop her. The maintenance corridors of the Kilathi flagship were darker than Hana had expected. Emergency lighting cast red shadows along the metal walls as she moved through the ship like a predator hunting prey. Her stolen alien uniform helped her avoid detection, but every step brought new dangers. She had already eliminated 6 guards during her infiltration, using her silenced HD weapons to clear a path toward the detention center. Each kill was precise and silent, leaving no trace of her presence except empty corridors and missing sentries. The ship layout was more complex than the intelligence reports had indicated. Multiple security checkpoints blocked access to the prisoner areas, forcing her to take longer routes through engineering sections and cargo bays. But her background in mechanical systems helped her navigate the alien technology. When she finally reached the detention level, Hana found something unexpected. Instead of a heavily guarded prison complex, she discovered an elaborate arena surrounded by viewing galleries. Thousands of Kilathi warriors filled the stands, cheering and roaring as they watched something happening in the center ring. From her hiding spot in the upper galleries, Hana could see human prisoners chained around the arena walls. Her sister Umbi sat among them, her face pale but defiant. In the center of the arena stood War Marshal Vextar, his golden scales gleaming under the bright lights. The massive alien leader held a communication device and spoke to the crowd in his harsh language. When he switched to English, his words echoed throughout the ship. "Humans of the Resistance," he announced, "your silent death has come to us as predicted. She moves through our ship like the coward she is, hiding in shadows and killing from behind." Hana realized with growing horror that her infiltration had been detected from the beginning. The Kilathi had allowed her to reach this point, turning her rescue mission into a public spectacle for their entertainment. "But I offer her a chance for honor," Vextar continued. "Face me in single combat, and your sister lives regardless of the outcome. Continue hiding, and watch her die slowly for the amusement of my warriors." The arena fell silent as every eye turned toward the galleries. Hana knew that dozens of Kilathi soldiers were already moving to surround her position. She could try to fight her way out, but she would never reach the prisoners before they were killed. Or she could step into that arena and face a 9-foot-tall alien warrior who had conquered 17 star systems. Hana checked her weapons one last time, then stood up in full view of the crowd. The Kilathi warriors roared with excitement as she walked down the arena steps, her HE rifles held ready in both hands. War Marshal Vextar smiled when he saw her, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "You're smaller than I expected, Silent Death. How many of my warriors have died to such a tiny creature?" Hana reached the arena floor and faced the alien commander across 30 meters of open space. The crowd noise faded to a whisper as she spoke her reply. "Not enough," she said quietly. The War Marshal laughed and drew his own weapons, curved blades that crackled with energy. "Your species amuses me, human. You fight with tools instead of claws, hide behind armor instead of scales. You are weak." Hana raised her rifles and smiled for the first time since the war began. It was not a pleasant expression. "Then this should be easy for you," she replied. The duel began without ceremony. Vextar moved faster than anything that large should be able to move, crossing the arena in seconds with his energy blades extended. Hana rolled sideways as the alien slashed where she had been standing, his weapons leaving glowing scars in the metal floor. She came up firing, her HE rifles speaking with deadly precision. The first shot struck Vextar's personal shield and passed through like it was made of air. The second shot hit his armor and ricocheted harmlessly away. The War Marshal had learned from previous encounters with human weapons. His armor was specially designed to deflect HD projectiles, even though his shields could not stop them. Purple blood flowed from a shallow wound on his shoulder, but he showed no sign of pain. "You cannot kill me with your toys," he snarled. advancing with calculated steps. Hannah backed away, studying his movements and looking for weaknesses. The alien was faster and stronger, but he fought with the arrogance of someone who had never faced an equal opponent. His attacks were powerful but predictable. She used the arena environment against him, leading him around obstacles and forcing him to attack from disadvantageous angles. When he lunged with both blades, she dropped low and fired into his unprotected knee joint. Vextar stumbled but did not fall. His counterattack nearly took her head off, the energy blade missing her face by centimeters. The crowd roared its approval as the two fighters circled each other like predators. "You fight well for prey," the war marshal admitted, "but you cannot win. I have killed champions from a dozen species." "Maybe," Hannah replied, ejecting empty power cells from her rifles and loading fresh ones. But none of them were human. She had been studying his patterns during their exchanges, learning how he moved and where his armor was weakest. Engineering problems always had solutions if you looked at them from the right angle. The solution to War Marshal Vextar was simple geometry and physics. When he charged again, Hannah did not dodge. Instead, she stepped forward to meet his attack, firing both rifles simultaneously at point-blank range. The HD projectile struck the same spot on his chest armor, the second shot following the path carved by the first. The alien armor that had deflected her previous attacks cracked under the concentrated impact. Purple blood sprayed across the arena floor as Vextar fell backward, his weapons clattering away across the metal surface. The crowd fell silent as their invincible war marshal lay dying at the feet of a human woman who barely reached his chest. Hannah stood over his body and looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at her. Then she did something that shattered every assumption the Kelethi had made about human nature. She accessed the ship communication system and broadcast a message that would be heard across their entire fleet. "This is Lihana of Earth," she said, her voice carrying to every Kelethi ship in the solar system. "Your war marshal is dead. Your shields are useless. Your armor cannot protect you. We are not your prey. We are your predators. Leave our space or join him in death." The silence that followed was more terrifying than any battle cry. The rescue ships arrived at the Kelethi flagship 12 hours after Hannah broadcast her message to the alien fleet. Captain Yundeho led the boarding party that found her sitting quietly in the ship command center, surrounded by the bodies of Kelethi officers who had tried to stop her from accessing their communication systems. She had spent those 12 hours methodically taking control of the massive vessel. Every Kelethi warrior who challenged her died quickly and silently. Her HD weapons spoke with mechanical precision as she cleared deck after deck, freeing human prisoners and gathering intelligence from alien computer systems. When Captain Yun found her, she was downloading fleet positions and tactical data that would change the course of the war. Her sister Umbi sat beside her, physically unharmed but shaken by everything she had witnessed. "Status report," Captain Yun requested, though the purple stains throughout the ship told most of the story. "Ship secured," Hannah replied without looking up from the alien computer terminal. 437 enemy casualties. All human prisoners recovered alive. Intelligence data downloaded and ready for transmission. The captain studied her face and felt a chill of concern. The woman before him was nothing like the quiet student who had first approached them with a prototype weapon. War had carved away everything soft and uncertain, leaving someone harder and more dangerous than any weapon she had ever built. "You did well," he said carefully. "Command wants you back at headquarters for debriefing and medical evaluation." Hannah finally looked at him, and he saw something cold and empty in her eyes. "Medical evaluation," she repeated. "Do they think I am broken?" Before Captain Yun could answer, Lieutenant Park Minho burst into the command center with urgent news. "The Kelethi fleet is in full retreat," he announced. "Your broadcast has triggered panic throughout their forces. 3 battle groups have already jumped to hyperspace." The psychological impact of Hannah's victory had exceeded every prediction. Kelethi warriors who had never known defeat were abandoning their positions across human space. The death of War Marshal Vextar and the capture of their flagship had shattered their confidence in their own superiority. But the retreating aliens had one final surprise waiting for humanity. Long-range sensors are detecting new contacts, Captain Yoon announced as reports flooded in from across the solar system. Unknown ships approaching from the galactic rim. Configuration matches no known Kilethi designs. The tactical display showed massive vessels emerging from hyperspace near the outer planets. These ships were even larger than Kilethi dreadnoughts, with strange curved hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Intelligence quickly identified them as belonging to the Vorthek, a species that controlled ancient technology from a long-dead civilization. The Kilethi had called in their allies for a final desperate assault on Earth itself. Admiral Chen's whaming voice crackled over the communication system from Fleet Command. All units, this is Priority Alpha Alert. The approaching vessels are deploying a weapon of unknown type near Neptune. Energy readings suggest planet killer capabilities. Hannah studied the sensor data with the same focused intensity she had once applied to engineering problems. The Vorthek weapon was unlike anything in human or Kilethi technology. It drew power from quantum fluctuations in space itself, building energy levels that could crack a planet core. Estimated time to firing readiness, she asked. 18 hours, came the reply. Target appears to be Earth. The war that had begun with humanity fighting for survival was about to end with their homeworld facing complete destruction. Every strategic analysis reached the same conclusion. Conventional forces could not stop a weapon that powerful. It would require something unprecedented. Hannah stood up from the command terminal and walked to the viewport overlooking Jupiter's massive bulk. In the distance, she could see the dark shapes of Vorthek vessels preparing humanity final judgment. I need a ship, she said quietly. Captain Yoon stepped beside her at the viewport. What are you planning? The same thing I always plan, she replied. To find a way to make them bleed. Her mind was already working on the problem with mechanical precision. The Vorthek weapon drew power from quantum energy sources, but every energy system had weaknesses. Every shield had a frequency that could disrupt it. Every weapon had a vulnerable moment between charging and firing. She had spent the war learning how to kill things that everyone said could not be killed. This would just be the biggest target yet. But as she studied the tactical situation, Captain Yoon noticed something that worried him more than the approaching enemy fleet. Hannah showed no emotion about the threat to Earth, no fear about the impossible odds, no doubt about her ability to find a solution. The war had created the perfect weapon against humanity enemies. The question was whether anything remained of the person who had once sat quietly in engineering classes, dreaming of building things instead of destroying them. Park Min-ho joined them at the viewport, looking exhausted from coordinating the prisoner rescue operations. Hannah, he said softly, maybe it is time to let someone else take the lead. You have done enough. She turned to look at her oldest friend, and for a moment he thought he saw something human flicker in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold calculation that had carried her through a dozen impossible battles. The war is not over, she said, and I still have work to do. In the distance, the Vorthek weapon continued building power that would soon turn Earth into scattered asteroids. Humanity's fate rested in the hands of someone who had forgotten how to be anything except a killer. The question was whether that would be enough to save them all. The assault on the Vorthek weapon platform began at 600 hours, with Hannah leading humanity's final strike force into the heart of enemy space. Her team included the best warriors from across the solar system, but she knew that most of them would not survive the mission. The ancient weapon hung in space like a dark star, its surface covered with technology that predated human civilization by millions of years. Energy readings showed it was nearly ready to fire, building power that would turn Earth into cosmic dust in less than 4 hours. Hannah piloted the lead assault craft through the defensive grid surrounding the platform. Vorthek ships moved to intercept them, firing weapons that twisted space itself into deadly geometric patterns. Behind her, human fighters exploded in brilliant flashes as they sacrificed themselves to clear a path for the strike team. "We are taking heavy casualties," Major Kim Jio reported from the tactical station. "Half the escort ships are gone." "Maintain course," Hannah replied, her voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them. Her hands moved across the controls with mechanical precision as she guided their ship through impossible spaces between enemy fire. The assault craft punched through the outer defenses and crashed into the weapon platform docking bay. Emergency systems sealed the breach as Hannah team prepared for the most dangerous infiltration of the war. They had studied the ancient technology for weeks, but much of it remained beyond human understanding. The platform interior was unlike anything they had encountered. Corridors curved in directions that hurt to look at, filled with machinery that hummed with power older than Earth itself. Vorthak defenders moved through the passages like living shadows, their tentacled forms adapting to environments that would kill most species. But Hannah had learned to kill anything that stood in her way. The battle through the platform became a running firefight across impossible architecture. Her HD weapons worked against Vorthak shields, but the aliens had studied human tactics and adapted their defenses. Each corridor cost lives. Each room demanded sacrifice from her dwindling team. Major Kim fell protecting a critical junction, his body torn apart by weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Lieutenant Jin died when ancient security systems activated, turning the air itself into a deadly trap. One by one, the strike team gave their lives to reach the weapon core. When Hannah finally stood before the heart of the planet killer, only Park Min-ho remained alive beside her. The weapon core was a sphere of impossible geometry that hurt to perceive directly, surrounded by control systems that defied human understanding. The power readings were off the scale. In less than an hour, this device would release enough energy to shatter Earth into asteroids. Every analysis said it could not be stopped by conventional means. But as Hannah studied the ancient controls, she realized something that changed everything. The weapon was not just a destroyer, it was also a creator. The same energy that could crack planets could also be redirected, turned against the fleet that had brought it here. She could save Earth by destroying every Vorthak and Kilathi ship in the solar system. All she had to do was reverse the weapon polarity and target their fleet instead of her homeworld. It would end the war instantly and guarantee humanity's survival. Her hands moved toward the control interface, then stopped. Min-ho looked at her with concern. "What are you waiting for?" he asked. "We have to stop this thing." Hannah stared at the weapon controls and saw two futures spreading before her. In one, she became the person who used ancient technology to commit genocide against her enemies. In the other, she chose a harder path that might cost humanity everything. "If I turn this weapon against their fleets, what does that make us?" she asked quietly. "The survivors," Min-ho replied. "Sometimes that is all that matters." But Hannah remembered sitting in engineering classes, dreaming of building things that helped people instead of destroying them. She thought about her sister Unbi, who still believed that her older sister was a hero rather than a killer. Most importantly, she remembered the choice between becoming a conqueror or remaining human. She began working on the weapon controls, but not to redirect its power. Instead, she started a cascade failure that would destroy the entire platform. The explosion would eliminate the threat to Earth, while ensuring that no one could ever use this terrible technology again. "You are destroying it," Min-ho said with growing alarm. "That weapon could protect us from future threats. It could also turn us into the very thing we fought against," Hannah replied. "Some prices are too high to pay, even for survival." The cascade failure accelerated beyond her ability to control it. Ancient systems overloaded in chain reactions that would soon tear the platform apart. She activated the emergency beacon that would guide rescue ships to their position, knowing they had minutes before the explosion. As the platform shook around them, Min-ho grabbed her arm. "I do not understand your choice. We could have ended this war completely." Hannah looked at her oldest friend and smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. The expression transformed her face, bringing back something that had been missing since the war began. "We did end it," she said. "We just chose to end it as humans instead of monsters." The rescue ships found them barely in time, pulling their escape pod clear as the weapon platform collapsed into quantum fire. The explosion was visible from Earth as a new star that burned briefly and then faded, taking with it both the threat to humanity and the temptation of ultimate power. The Vorthek and Kilathi fleets, seeing their ultimate weapon destroyed by the same species they had tried to enslave, finally accepted what the universe was trying to teach them. Humanity was not prey to be hunted. They were predators who chose when to hunt and when to show mercy. The alien fleets retreated beyond the galactic rim, carrying word that Earth was protected by warriors who could not be conquered or corrupted. 5 years later, Professor Lee Hanna stood before her advanced weapons engineering class at the rebuilt Seoul Polytechnic University. Her students did not know that their quiet teacher had once held the fate of human civilization in her hands. They saw only a brilliant instructor who occasionally smiled when they asked particularly thoughtful questions. But sometimes, when news reports mentioned distant alien activities, her students noticed Professor Lee unconsciously touch her desk drawer. They did not know that inside, beside lesson plans and graded papers, lay a small HD pistol, waiting patiently for the day when quiet students might need to become warriors again. In her lectures, she taught them that the most important part of engineering was not building better weapons, but knowing when not to use the ones you had built. True strength, she would tell them, was choosing to remain human even when the universe offered you the power to be something else. She never raised her hand in those long-ago classes, but when humanity needed her, she had raised something far more powerful than weapons. She had raised hope.